I find it fascinating that we get these readings today on this Independence Day. There's a couple of vignettes here in the story, in the gospel, that feel like they're not really related, but this entire narrative is really about community and what that means. So the first vignette of Jesus teaching in the synagogue helps us remember something that's incredibly important. That Jesus' name that he was making for himself, the reputation that he was building, was considered scandalous by the people who knew him the best. And so Jesus recognizes his vocation. And when I say vocation, funny that Pastor Dave mentioned this idea of calling. It's not about what we do in the world, but who we are in the world. That is the true essence of vocation. And Jesus understood his very clearly. That his vocation was to bring about the reign of God. And to do it by preaching good news and healing people and bringing people in. But he is not only rejected, but honestly just disowned by his family, by his town, and by the region in which he was born. Now, this story is a bit of comfort to some of us. It's a comfort to any of us who have been disowned for any myriad of reasons. It's comforting to those among us who have been disowned by their families or their faith of origin because of their gender identity or gender expression. It's comforting to anyone who has been disowned because they stood up in their family against something that was happening that was wrong. This is comforting to anyone who found their voice in a room or in a home where we were expected to be silent. It's comforting to any of us who have ever felt like we did not belong to the family or the town or the religion in which we were born. And this is Jesus' own experience. And so what does Jesus do? He has this experience of being disowned, of being pushed aside, of being told that he's crazy. We've heard this multiple times in the Gospel of Mark. And so Jesus does what all of us in that situation are compelled to do, is we build our own community. And so he calls his disciples, his people, the people that he has pulled together, that are his family. He calls together his people where he can continue to live out not only his vocation, but encourage them to live out theirs. And the vocation is building the reign of God, building a new kind of empire. And so how does this happen? So Jesus gathers his people, and he reminds them who they are, which is what all good communities do. And then he challenges them to go live it. And so he sends them out, 2 itinerant people at a time, beggars really, completely ill-prepared for whatever the world might offer them. They are given tools for the journey. They're given sandals and a staff, nothing else. No money, no food, no certainty of what will happen or where they may lay their head at night. Because he understands the very thing he's trying to get them to understand, which is the gift, the vocation is already in there. And it is by stepping into it fully that we begin to own it. These beggars are set only for dependency. Their survival depends on reaching out to other people and making connections. This is community. He tells them, eat whatever they give you. You ask if you can stay there. You stay there until you're done preaching and healing. They give you what you need, and you give them what they need. This is community. He teaches them about this beautiful thing called mutual dependence. It is the acknowledgement that we need each other, that none of us make it in the world alone, no matter how much we might pull up our own bootstraps. Trust me, no one has ever done that on their own. Funny, or at least curious, that this is the gospel stories given to us on this Independence Day, when we celebrate American capitalistic independence. And yet the gospel tells a completely different story. Today, our culture celebrates not the reign of God, but the reign of man and patriotism, which is a beautiful thing. Recognizing and honoring and supporting the goodness that is inherent in the founding documents of this country, the thing that we are called to be in the world. Beautiful thing. Fundamentally different, however, from nationalism, which is patriotism on a weird kind of steroid, where we support and honor this country no matter what it does, no matter how far away from the founding documents we might actually stray. And this is the fight that we have internally all the time. But here's what's amazing. We say all the time that this is a nation founded on God. We say it. It's a Christian nation. And so let us look very carefully at the nation that we've created and lay it next to the gospel that we are presented with today and ask ourselves, how well are we doing? Because the gospel of Jesus and the reign of Jesus, the reign of God, is not about independence. It's about mutual dependence in recognizing that we need each other. When one of us succeeds, we all succeed. When one of us fails, we all fail. There's an author by the name of James Robinson, in his book titled The Gospel of Jesus, says this, and I quote, Jesus' basic issue, which is still basic today, is that most people have solved the human dilemma for themselves at the expense of everyone else, putting them down as to stay afloat themselves. This vicious, antisocial way of coping with the necessities of life only escalates the dilemma for the rest of society. The myth that we are sold about what it means to be American versus the truth of the gospel about what it means to be Christian. And this is the day where they do this. Both things are inherently, at their truest form, oh so good. He goes on to say that we should not carry money while bypassing the poor, or carry a backpack with extra clothes and food while ignoring the cold and hungry laying in the gutter. Jesus' message was simple. Trust God to look out for you by providing people who will care for you, 2 by 2. And listen to him when he calls you to be the one that provides it. Mutual dependency. Our gospels today are simple, so difficult to live, but so simple in thought. It is a call for us to practice mutual dependence, and practice is important. Practice implies that we don't have it, that we need to practice because we live in a culture that tells us constantly that that is weak. That if we can't manage it on our own, there's something fundamentally wrong with us. And the gospel says, of course you can't. We weren't designed to. And so we practice. We practice providing for and being provided for. And it's a practice we're invited to because it's a spiritual practice. It's something that we devote ourselves to, that we work on. And we do it not only because it makes this country better, but because it makes this community better and because it makes us better. The choice is as clear for us today as it was in Jesus' time. To choose individualism, independence, and competition, which has unfortunately become the American way, or to choose community and cooperation and connectedness, because that is the way of Jesus. And as we so often are asked to do, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, day after day, we get to choose. And that will determine what kind of community we live in. And so let us be proud of where we live. And let us be grateful for the gifts that it has afforded at least most of us. And recognize that it isn't even close to as beautiful a thing as it could be if we were truly rooted in the gospel. And so let us choose that. That's worth shooting some fireworks over. Amen.